lecture to the field, I want to say a couple things about gamesmanship and expectations. So when I was dating my wife, and on our first couple of dates, let's say, the first date, uh, I presented a certain side of myself. And everybody does this when you're dating someone you're interested in. You don't hang all the dirty laundry out on the first date. You don't do it on the second date. Heck, you don't do it on the fifth date. You start by presenting a certain aspect of yourself, the good aspect or good aspects. And over time, as the person gets to know you, they come to see other sides of you as well, including sides that maybe you didn't want to hang out up there front and center in front of the person you're dating and you're interested in. And I don't think there's anything fundamentally wrong with this. I think that it's a part of the gamesmanship of dating. It's something that people expect. Since it is an expectation, I don't believe that it is fundamentally dishonest if you are not hanging out all the dirty laundry at the beginning. Now, it is probably dishonest if you receive direct questions and provide, dishonest answers to the person you're dating. In fact, it is dishonest, not just probably dishonest, it is. So certainly that's something that you need to, from the get-go, be honest about. But you don't necessarily have to tell the person you pardon me, tell the person you're interested in every aspect of yourself. So for instance, I have in my past, one of my bones in the closet when my skeletons in the closet when I was dating my wife is certain members of my family who are not really good, shall we say, attractive things that a potential mate might want to have in a spouse as members of the family. And so I didn't tell my now wife about them early on. Of course, she found out, and I did tell her when we got to know each other a little bit more. But, just like you might not tell a customer about all the ways in which the use of the product that she's interested in might potentially damage her, physically damage her, or if misused, harm her in some way. So also, I think that it's reasonable just to present a certain aspect of yourself when you are dating someone. So if we use the dating analogy as an example of marketing, and we all market ourselves when we date somebody, if we use that as an example of marketing that we all engage in, I think it's pretty straightforward to see how it is possible to be honest within the rules of the game of dating, and also at the same time to be fully honest. I'm not talking about any kind of corners being cut here. I believe that I was fully honest with my wife while dating her, but within the rules of the game, and also to be fully honest when marketing product within the rules of the game. So when you're marketing a product, what I mean by this is you present the aspects of the product that you think will sell the product. You talk about, suppose you're marketing a car. You talk about the fuel efficiency. You talk about the seating room. You talk about the headroom, the leg room. You talk about the great AC. You talk about the trunk space. You talk about the reliability of this model. You don't talk about how beta tests may have suggested that the brakes on this model might not function as well as previous models. There are certain aspects of the car's functionality that you don't necessarily have to reveal, and it's not expected that you will reveal all of the dirty laundry, all of the skeletons in the closet about the product. And to think that that is to, I think, misinterpret the nature of the game. And buyers understand this. Now, also at the same time, smart buyers, at the very least, when buying a car, will ask a variety of questions. When I bought a minivan for my family recently, I believe me, thoroughly asked a bunch of questions about the product. I did my due diligence research on my own before even engaging with a salesman, and that involved a substantial amount of inquiry on the whole into a lot of the functionality of the engine, functionality of the wheels, functionality of the cabin space, all of that stuff. And I think that's just part of being a smart buyer. You don't have to spoon feed buyers every aspect of the product. There comes a time when buyers, I think, need to take responsibility, and it is important for sellers to give buyers the space to practice due diligence and that responsibility. Okay, so all of this is to say, I suppose, that you can be a Christian and be honest as Christians should be within the context of a social game that doesn't require brutal honesty. Let me provide one other example besides dating to give you just a case in point of what I mean by gamesmanship in different social settings or games. Okay, so we all receive Christmas gifts that we don't like, or we don't want. And we all show gratitude for these Christmas gifts. And my mother taught me to write thank you notes to show the gratitude that I have for my Christmas gifts. And often I would thank people and tell them, how I was interested in their product, like the gift that I received, even when I didn't especially care for the gift. But this is part of being grateful, part of the social interaction that surrounds Christmas. It shows that you appreciate and you care for the person you're interacting with. And it's more about that care and appreciation than it necessarily is about the product itself, the gift itself. And I think my mother realized that when she taught me to write thank you notes and to thank people for Christmas gifts. Now, did I ever say anything out and out untruthful in those thank you notes? Probably sometimes I did, and probably I shouldn't have. Now I write better thank you notes where I don't try to say anything that's untruthful, but I do everything possible to make the giver of the gifts feel appreciated. Okay, it is possible in marketing, in business, to absolutely say the truth, just like you can say the truth in your thank you notes, in a way that fully represents the truth, but that plays within the context of the social setting. And again, doesn't brutally represent the truth, but represents those good aspects of the product in the way that the buyer expects you to do. Okay, so that's the reason why I think then that Christians can be fully honest in the field of marketing and can pass all the scriptural injunctions about truth-telling and still be in this field and representing the good aspects of their products. Finally, though, on that topic, it is important to remember that whenever asked directly about products, I fully agree that marketers need to respond truthfully about the nature of the products that they are offering and what the downsides might potentially be. Now, having said that, I want to turn to a different topic. I want to turn to the topic of caveat emptor and caveat venditor and consumer sovereignty and paternalism. So for starters, just by way of reference as a touchstone for discussing this topic, I think it's interesting in the book Business Ethics in Action that is in the business ethics course at HBU, that a great emphasis was placed on this Mattel case. And it's a case where a toy company, a famous toy company that makes lots of household name toys, including, I believe, Barbie dolls, but, lots of action figures, lots of Matchbox cars, things like that. This company produced products that began harming children, and some of the children were, I'm sure, misusing the products. Believe me, I've got little children, and they stuff everything in their mouths, and they have no idea. It's their first time encountering products in the world, so they have no idea what the correct usage is for a lot of these products. So I'm sure that some of those children were misusing the products, but some of them probably were using them correctly, and parts of the products were snapping off, and children were being injured or even dying in some cases. And Mattel immediately responded to some of the complaints and lawsuits by blaming their manufacturing processes in their supply chain, including especially China. Now, it turns out Mattel was at fault, and China pointed this out, and eventually Mattel did take responsibility for what they were doing. But the Mattel case is interesting because it raises all sorts of questions about the amount of disclosure that is necessary in marketing. And that is central to the caveat venditor, caveat emptor distinction. So let me just put these Latin words up here. And they are backwards, but caveat venditor here is just Latin. I'm sorry, caveat emptor is Latin for buyer beware. Okay? And in the Mattel case, buyer beware just means the idea that it is up to the consumer to do due diligence prior to inspecting and purchasing the product. Caveat venditor is a different system. It's a system of seller, literally it just means seller beware. And it's a system where the onus is on the seller to do adequate disclosure for the products in question. Now, in general, in the United States, over the last several decades, there has been a trend away from a caveat emptor system in most consumer products towards a caveat venditor system. Let me describe some of the characteristics of these different systems, and I think that what I'm saying will become clearer. A caveat emptor system is the system that existed throughout early capitalism in the 19th century and on into the mid-20th century, and it had a certain set of ethical expectations that surrounded it. It was a system where buyers were expected to protect themselves, where the expectation again was that buyers would do a certain degree of due diligence before purchasing product, and everyone knew this, and buyers knew this, and buyers knew that they purchased product and used product at their own risk, and there really wasn't a lot of legal recourse for them if a product failed or if a product damaged them physically in some way. There were certain weaknesses to this system, serious weaknesses. So imagine a proverbial Wild West town in capitalist early, maybe 19th century America, and you are interested in health products, and I ride into town. I'm a health product salesman with my covered wagon. Little known to you, I'm actually a snake oil salesman. I sell you product that fails to do what it's advertised to do. It is also product that may actually harm you in some way. Okay, you use the product, your fingers turn green, you seek me out to find me. I have skipped town in my wagon to go to the next town where I will pull the same trick on the next unsuspecting, naive, vulnerable townspeople. Okay, now that was a caveat emptor system, and in that kind of a system, you can't go to the law, with a few exceptions. If the law is immediately within reach, perhaps there would have been some vigilante justice. But you can't go to the law and sue me personally or professionally, because the expectation is that you will do your due diligence prior to purchasing and consuming products. Now, that has generally changed in the last several decades. Increasingly, we have moved towards a caveat venditor system, where the expectation is that the sellers will be the ones who bear the responsibility for disclosure issues, for product failure issues, for issues that have not been adequately addressed in marketing. Pardon me. And this has been driven, I think, this is my own theory, but I've seen it confirmed in articles. It's been driven by high-profile media cases of product failure, products harming small children or elderly people, vulnerable populations. And it's been driven by increasing desire to involve government and business, which is also a trend that has taken place over the last few decades. And government regulates very well, and government especially is an entity that specializes in compelling marketing disclosure. Now, often this disclosure has been perfunctory. So, for instance, in the field of credit